Hello YouTube and welcome back to episode 7 of how to make a browser game for dummies. So today I want to start looking at posting this form or the variables and the inputs in this form to a server-side script that will basically handle the variables given by the form and put those into the database. So that means that we will have to write a server-side script, but we will also have to make a new table for the users so that we can insert that information that's given here into the database. So first, before we start with the database, let's go into our editor. Let me close all the files to prevent confusion. Open the front end folder, go into pages and register.php, and scroll a little bit down. And in here, at the form tag, make sure that you add, let's see, action is file name. So the thing is that this action is executed as soon as the form is posted. So if you press on the submit button, these inputs, these variables will be sent to this file. That's very important to know. And how do we post these variables? Well, with the method is equal to quotation marks post. We post it towards this file. So let's quickly make a new folder all the way at the top. So right click on MMORTS new folder and let's call it backend. And in the backend folder goes all the server-side scripts. So let's create a new folder inside backend and let's call it account. So all account related stuff goes into this folder. Now let's create a new file called registration handling. Let's just call that for now, .php, and let's save it. And in my case, it automatically opens the file, but just leave it. And go back to the register.php file, and in here the action, call it, put in here the path towards the registration-handling.php file. So in my case, backend account slash, so backend slash account slash registration-handling.php. So now, whenever we press on the submit button, this file is being called, and that's very important to know, to be able to do. So now if we go back to our registration form and we put some test variables in here and we post it, it will get the new file. And currently it's not doing anything, but we can very quickly fix that. If you go into the registration handling file, and you open PHP and you close PHP, and up here you assign the variables from the form. So we are posting the username, the password in the email, and you have to get these IDs because that's very important. So $username, let's just make a new variable and assign $_post, bracket open, bracket close, single quotation marks, username. And then close it off with a semicolon. So this, how do you know which value to use here? Well, that's basically just the ID that you've assigned to the input. So in our case, the username input has the ID username. So that's what we put in the post thingy. So whenever this, when the submit button is pressed, username is posted and assigned to variable username in a second in the action file. So let's do this the same with the password. Password, that's spelled right. And let's also do that with email. What did I call it in the backend? Yeah, just email. Okay, in the form, I mean, I'm sorry. Is equal to $post email. And let's close it off. So now whenever the form is posted, these values are assigned to these variables. The next step, let's add a comment for clarity. Assign variables from form. That's to make it easier to understand what's going on. And if we go back to this file after a few months, we can still know what was up with this. So what you should actually do now is check if the values that have been sent to the backend script is what you expect them to be. So I will add a comment here saying check if values are okay. And let's just leave that comment there for now. This is for a later tutorial because this is going into quite advanced PHP stuff, like checking if the values are numbers or letters, or if a password is a password, etc., etc. That's to prevent hacking of your website, but we will approach that in a later episode. So now, just to debug, let's add a comment debug, and let's start echoing username. Well, let's make it a string first. So double quotation marks, echo double quotation marks semicolon, and let's add in here username, colon, oops, wrong button, colon, and add 2 quotation marks again. Let's delete this one, and use dots in here, and post the username. So what this basically does is the first quotation marks are saying that I'm echoing a string. And we put some text in here. This is basically just plain text. And we use another semicolon and another semicolon in here to say that we temporarily want to end the string and instead use a PHP variable in here. And the points are used to like glue it together, glue everything together, because it would make sense if it would work like this as well, but it doesn't. You have to glue it together with the points, just the same as when you would do this, for example. So currently we are just gluing these things together, and this would work fine. And you do the same in a string basically. Like this is a part. You could consider this a legitimate part. You could consider this a legitimate part and this a legitimate part, even though it's empty. So next, let's make it a little bit more advanced and type password here with a colon and space, just to make it look a little bit nicer. Now let's add a dot again, a point, and let's declare password, the variable. Add another point and 2 quotation marks, and let's call this guy email, email address, colon, space, and put the email variable here. So what this does, whenever, normally the script executes from top to bottom. So first these variables are assigned, posted to these variables. In the future we are going to check if the values are what we expect them to be. But for now we are just posting these values in a string so that we can understand what's going on. So let's go to the website. And now if we fill in this little form, for example, the username is yapcoding, the password is test123, and the email is yapcoding@youtube.com. And now if we submit this, we are getting a bunch of errors because, let me quickly take a look what's going on. I might have actually done something completely wrong in the find index. I might have actually bugged this up. Yes, I did fuck this up. Okay, I'm very sorry guys. So it's not IDs that we should worry about. It's the name that we should worry about. So in each input, add name is equal to quotation marks username. And these guys are hooking up together. So I messed that up last episode. I'm very sorry. It's not the IDs which the label is hooked to. It's the username or the name it is hooked to. So the first label was the username, the first input was the username input. So let's call it name is equal to quotation marks username, and do the same for email, password and email, but of course rename them to what they really are. So name is password, email, name is email. So now when posting, these values are the names of the inputs. So username is the name of the username input that goes in here. That makes sense, right? Okay, so now if you execute it, it should work. Test 1, 2, 3 is the password, and the rest got memorized by the script, and it still breaks. Okay guys, so it seems like it was just a caching problem, because I haven't changed anything, just refreshed the page a few times, and it seems like whenever I post these values, they now seem to work. So I think it was just a caching problem. Let's try it again. Yep coding, test 1, 2, 3, yepcoding@youtube.com. Let's just try it. Yeah, now it goes through perfectly without changing anything. So I'm assuming it was just cache. It can happen sometimes, so to get around that, you will just have to refresh and reload your files in your browser a few times. It was very likely that I was using a older version of the form, like that my browser cached this form without it having the names. So it's important that the form, the inputs, have the correct usernames or the correct names. So username is username, password is password, email is email, etc. And then in here you post those values like so. And then you can just display them with an echo and process them like normal variables. So I'm sorry about the confusion right there. It's just a caching issue. So here we go. So now we can post the values to the backend. So if we want, we could actually start inserting those into the database, even though we didn't process them or check them or whatever. For now, we could do that because nobody else is using our site. So later on, I will tell you how to fix that and make it safe. So let's go into your database. Under MMO RTS, create a new table, create table, and call it users, and add a column called ID. It's very important. And this guy should have a length of 255, that should be enough. And then go into default value and give it an outer increment. What this does, what this little row is basically like an identifier for a row. That's why it's called ID, identification thingy. So basically, whenever a row is added to this table, it gets an ID. It's a number. It can have a length of 255 numbers. That's a very large number. Its default value is auto incremented. What that means is whenever a row is added, it automatically increments the ID. So the first row will have ID 1, the second row will have ID 2, the third row will have ID 3, and so on and so on. And well, you understand it, it's quite easy. So let's add another column called username. And of course that's a varchar because it can contain letters and numbers. And let's give it a maximum length of, well, what's acceptable? Let's see. Letter counter. Let's just use some online. What? I've never seen this stuff before. Okay, let's see. Letter counter. Let's see. What's a normal username? Jab coding. How long is that guy? Okay, let's say that this is the maximum username. That's like 20 characters. So let's make it 20 characters, and the default value is null. There should always be a value, but just in case, the default value is null. Then let's add another row, and let's call it password. And this guy should be varchar as well. And I think I'm going to encrypt the passwords with MD5. And that's not the safest solution out there. You can use like a bcrypt or blowfish. And that basically salts the password and it's almost unhackable. It's doable, but it's quite advanced. So I'm not going into that. At least not like in the early tutorials for this, how to make a browser game for dummies. Maybe in the future I will make or dedicate a episode to using bcrypt and like encrypting your password correctly. For now I will just be using MD5. So we will have to look up the length of MD5. Let's see. The output is 32 hexadecimal digits. Let's see. That's not what I want to know. Like the database length. Database length for MD5. Since MD5 always produces, yeah, better use char 32. Okay, so let's do that. Let's go into here and let's give it a char 32 because it's never longer and it's never shorter. So that would fit just fine. So for now, this is perfect. Let's create another column called email and let's give it a varchar of 255. Let's just give it that because it's very hard to predict the length of an email address. So let's make it very long. Can we only one out key? Yeah, that's right. Okay. So now we've got the 3 columns that are posted by the registration handling form, and we got the ID, which is auto incremented, so we don't have to do anything with that. But the ID is an identifier, and depending on the database, like what do you call it? I'm using HeidiSQL to view the database stuff. So whenever I try to save a ID that hasn't been defined as a key, it gives me an error. So it might be that you don't get that error, but you will have to define the ID as a key. The ID is an identifier. So right click on it, create new index primary, and right click on it again, create new index key. What this basically means is that the ID is an identifier. It's a key which you can find other results with, or this result with. So now if I save it, I don't get any errors. So if you have that, make sure that you define the ID row as a primary key. So next, this is all fine and dandy and will work just fine. Now we should start working on posting these values into the database. So we did use a database connection before, I believe in the config file. Let me quickly look that up though. Into the system folder should be the config file. And yes, here we are. So the config file is creating a connection and then doing stuff. So let's just copy that part over. Actually, let me quickly look something up. Okay, the config file is required before anything else is loaded. Before the content is loaded, the config file is loaded. That means that this stuff has already been assigned as soon as the page is loaded. Same goes for this guy, and same goes for this guy. So we can just reuse this stuff, meaning that whenever we are executing like a MySQL query, it gets the connection. We can always reuse that. So let's close the config file and go back into here. Let's remove this line and call it, add a comment saying insert data into database. Press on enter. Okay, so let's see. In here, below the comment, we add a query first. So SQL, $SQL, and we assign a string to this with the query. So we don't have to make the connection like we did in here when retrieving values from the database. We don't have to do that again, this part, because it's already done before the page loads, before this part is loaded. So let's see. Let's just build the query first for the insertion. So in here, you should, like in a string, you should say insert into, and then the table name, so users. And then, let's see, parentheses open and close. And in here, you are going to call the columns. So if I'm correct, let's quickly take a look. Username, password, email. Username, password, email. And it has to be in the same order as it is displayed in the database, or as it is ordered in the database. So next, let's press enter here, make a new line in here, so that we can create a new line in the SQL query. So let's put here values, parentheses open and close. And now let's actually put this guy behind here. And that's basically it. So what you're basically doing now, this query, when you execute this query, it's inserting into users, into the columns username, password, email, the following values. So we can give 3 parameters here. The username, so let's put the username variable here, username, comma, password, comma, email. So now we are posting or inserting username into the username column, password variable into the password column, email into the email column. So now we got a query, but now we need to execute it. Execute query. And how do you do that? Well, that's quite simple. Let's create an if statement first. Parentheses open and close. These brackets. Let's also make an else statement like so. Put it on a new line just for clarity. And this guy as well. So in here, the thing that you want to check is if the connection has successfully executed the query by typing $con, a little dash and an arrow to the right. Oh, arrow to the right. No, I'm sorry. Just type query in here and then parentheses, open and close. And then the SQL or the query that you want to execute. So basically it's querying this query with that connection. And we've already made that connection in the configuration, so we don't have to do that again. If I'm right, I'm hoping I am. Okay, so let's see. Behind here, we put 3 equal signs and then true. So if connection query SQL, so if this is executed, fine, no problems, then it will do this. So in here we can say echo account has been added successfully. That's basically our success message. If it's not executed correctly, let's throw an error here. So error with a string. So basically echo a string first, error colon, and then let's start displaying a variable. So error quotation mark point $SQL point 2 quotation marks, and well, actually I think, yeah, let's add a line break so that it's easier to read. And then behind here let's add a point again, $con dash arrow to the right, error semicolon. So basically what this does is if there is an error, post the query that we try to execute and the error that was given by the connection. So basically if you would execute the form now, so if we would press on submit, the values in here would be executed, would be like sent to the database. So let's try that. Hopefully it's not gonna get broken. Jab coding is our username, password is 123, and the email address is jabcoding@youtube.com. Now if you press on submit, it doesn't work. Okay. So I think I know why this happens. Let's call all the way at the top. Let's make a global $con, and let's add a semicolon, because it says that the connection is not defined or doesn't exist. So that's probably because the con thing actually happens in the config file and not in the registration handling file. It does happen somewhere way above this file, but you will have to make it a global so that you can access it from this object. So now if you go back and try it again. So my password is test123. Fatal error, call to a member function query on a non-object ID on line 16. But the connection does work now. So I did something wrong instead. Let's quickly take a look. Did I make a typo? I'm just comparing my results with what it should be. Okay, this seems to be fine. So it isn't in here. Instead, it should be like in the config file. Let's see. connection is MYSQL. Okay, that's all fine. I have the same parameters, so that's all fine. I might have to. Okay, no, this is all fine as well. Connection close. No. Okay, so let's go back to the error and take a look at it. Non-function call to remember. Let's quickly Google it and see what that is gonna give us. And let's see what it says. Quick dirty fix. Globalizing this guy. Okay, that's actually. Let's take a look at this code. Yeah, he's globalizing the connection. I've done the same though. So I think that should already be fixed. Oh, wait. Query. Why is it trying to do that? On a non-object ID. Okay, to quickly fix this, we can just copy the connection stuff. Let's do that quickly. Copy it like so. Go into registration handling stuff. Let's delete this guy and paste it over with the database server information, creating the connection, checking the connection. Yeah, let's just do it like that. And now if you go back and try it one more time, test 1, 2, 3, submit. Error. Insert into users, username, password, email, using the values. Jab coding, test 1, 2, 3, jabcoding@youtube.com. You have an error in your SQL syntax. Check the manual that responds, blah, 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 near @youtube.com. Okay, that's because there's no single quotation marks. This guy is actually breaking the code. Okay, so that's a good sign though. Let's check if there's a result. No, that's good. Go back into the editor and let's add single quotation marks around these variables so that they are considered a so that the code in there isn't executed the way it has been doing before. I do want to fix this in a nice way though. I'll have to take a look at that in a second. So let's go back first to the registration form and enter the values. Test 1, 2, 3, jab coding. Let's execute it. Account has been added successfully. Now if you go back, oh, oops, wrong button. Let's close that. Okay, so if you go into the database, you can see that the row has been added. Jab coding, username, password is correctly, email is correct. So now if we add another row, jack doodle, jack@doodle.com, and we submit it, you can see that and another row has been added. Let's quickly fix that. So another row has been added, Jack Doodle, with email jack@doodle.com. And the ID is 2. As you can see, it auto-incremented. That's quite nice. So next, let's quickly delete those results by control deleting them. So those are gone. And let's go into here. And let's try to figure out why I cannot use this guy in here, because I would prefer doing that. I feel like I think I know what's going on. Okay, so let's see, let's just follow along and try to do the same. So these guys, just globalize them like so. I don't know if this is going to fix it. It's just a silly attempt. Okay, so $con, semicolon, let's put it all the way up here as well. And now, let's also delete this guy, don't need it. Now let's try to add our account again. Jab coding, test 1, 2, 3, jab coding @YouTube, and let's submit it. Fatal error, call to a member function query, non-object ID. Okay. And why is it doing that? On line 20, registration handler. Line 20. Okay, SQL is over here, connection is over here, and it's pulling it from over here. We might actually have to do it like so. Let's try that. Create a connection, bam. Now, if you go back into here, try it again. No database selected. Okay, so for some reason this isn't working, like globalizing the variables isn't working. So I will have to figure out what's going on with that. So let's just Control Z all the way back to when it was working, like so. Okay, let's just leave it at this for now. My ear is itchy. Let's just leave it at this for now, and I will figure out why that's not working in between episodes. And then next episode I can give you the reason why. So for now, this is working fine. However, there should be two things added to this right now. The first thing is, before actually inserting these variables into the database, we need to check if there's already an account with that username. So we will have to fix that. And we will also have to encrypt the password. And that's quite simple actually. So under, let's just add a new row here, like so. And let's add a comment saying encrypt password. And in here you type MD5, parentheses open, parentheses close. You add the variable password, and then you add a semicolon at the end. So basically this is a predefined function, and you are putting the variable password in there. So pardon me. So the variable password is being MD5 basically. The result has to be assigned to $password, like so. So basically what you're doing is the password entered by the user in the form is being assigned to $password. Then that assigned value is being given to MD5 password, and the MD5 password is being assigned to password. So you can just reuse variables like this and overwriting them basically. That's what I would do. So now the password is encrypted. Very easy system. If we make our account now, let's try it. Test123 is our password. And let's submit it. And the row has been added successfully. And if you look in the database, this is our encrypted password. And as you can see, it looks nothing like test123. It's not recognizable. So this makes it a tiny bit harder to hack the password, or yeah, basically hack this account. Like for example, if your server is hacked, if your database is hacked, they can like retrieve all the passwords of all your users. So you have to make sure that you encrypt your users' passwords very well, so that evil hackers can't do bad stuff with it. So this is just a very simple encryption system that's very easy to crack. So later on we will have to change it to like Blowfish or Bcrypt, which is incredibly which does a way better job. So, but we will get to that later. So now we are basically like, yeah, this is like a very basic insertion system. Okay guys, so now we want to make sure that before anything is inserted into the database, we need to make sure that there's not a user with the same username yet. And we can do that by creating a select. Like we have to get some info from the database first. So let's add a comment in here saying check if user is unique. Basically like checking if the user doesn't exist yet. And we will have to write a little query first. So $SQL is equal to string, and then in here comes the query like usual. So select username from users, where username is equal to single quotation marks username. So what this basically does, it's gonna go in here and select the column username. So it's only getting all the usernames from users, but only where username is equal to the variable entered by the user, by the person using the script, the form. So next we need to execute this guy. If result is equal to equal to mark MySQL I'm messing this up. MySQL SQLE underscore query, parentheses open and close, dollar connection, comma, dollar SQL, and then brackets open and close, row count is MySQLE query result, row count MySQL query, and parentheses open, parentheses close, and then in here you place the result. So let's add a semicolon behind here. So basically it's executing this query in the if statement and assigning the result to $result. And the MySQLE query is executed with the connection info from here, and the SQL is the query that we just wrote. So the results that are generated using this query are assigned to $result, and the if statement basically checks if it's empty or not, if it's true or false. So if there are results, it's true and it will execute this part. And the row count is basically the result assigned to here. So now we can basically echo this little guy, echo row count. And let's just comment this part out for now. Do I have a user yet? Yes, okay. Let's comment this guy out like so. And that will all be commented out. So now only this part of the code is executed. So let's go and let's try it out. Test 1, 2, 3. And it will say at least 2 parameters on line 31. Let's see what's going on. 31. Result. Oh, I messed this up. I'm very sorry, guys. So MySQLE query should actually be MySQLE num underscore rows. That's what should be done. I'm very sorry. Okay, so let's go back and try it again. Bam, 1. There's already 1 row with the same username. So this is not gonna work. But if we use blah blah, test 1, 2, 3, rows 0. So that's very good. So next, let's delete that echo. Okay, so let's create a new if statement, parentheses open, parentheses close, and in here you're going to check if row count is greater than 1, is equal to or greater than 1, and if it is, brackets open, bracket close, echo, there is already a user with this username. Otherwise, if it is unique, execute the following code down here. So let's uncomment this part, make sure that this stays commented, and just cut it out of here and paste it into here. Make sure that it all looks nice like so. So now let's make sure that what's wrong with this? Oh wait, I'm sorry. Okay, it has to be like so. The greater than sign comes first and then the equal sign. So if row count greater than or equal to 1, so if there's already 1 user or more, there's already a user with this username. Otherwise, just insert the user. So now, if you go back to registration and we try to create an account with username jabcoding, which is already in the database, jabcoding, it will say there's already a user with this username. But if you try Berta with the password I am the best player out there, and she has the email address at bertha@1337.com, and we insert this, account has been added successfully. Now if you go in here, you can see Bertha's account and she's a pro, so that all works fine and dandy. That's very cool. Let's delete this row for now as well. So guys, I hope that that you found this tutorial very useful. Let's just save the files, make sure that it's all saved. So basically what we've got now is we can insert data into the database with a registration form. Next episode I want to start looking at selecting data with the login form and making sure that the username and password entered in the form match the details from the database. And if they do, we should start up a session and make sure that the person that tried to log in is logged in. That's going to be quite a lot of fun to make. I hope that I didn't went too fast. If I did went too fast, please let me know, because there have been a lot of parts in this episode that were quite messy. And I hope it's okay though. Just let me know. So once again, thank you, and I hope you found it useful, and I hope to see you next time. Bye bye.